Welcome to the Freight Project Podcast, brought to you by Ceresys, a North American third-party logistics company providing shippers transportation management technology and solutions.
On today's The Freight Project Podcast episode, Ceresys welcomes Eric Workman, the Ceresys Customer Service Manager. Eric oversees our auditing and billing departments, as well as our damage claims department. Both services help streamline shippers' internal processes by saving them time and money, as well as not having to dedicate resources to do either of these functions. You'll get to learn about how Eric's first career in the airlines industry, focusing on operations, logistics, and customer service, primed him well to drive the vision of the Ceresys Customer Service Department. On this episode, Eric and I will discuss why a focus on customer service is vital for shippers, especially as the market is tight, rates are increasing, and there are many distractions in shipping that take away from customer service initiatives. Eric then shares why it is important that shippers should have some mechanism in place to audit freight invoices to ensure they are not charging their customers more than necessary. And as Eric's teams work on resolving freight claims for our shipper customers, he'll share tips that shippers can take to mitigate damage or loss issues. Finally, many shippers aren't as experienced in freight claims as Ceresys and can get frustrated at why a freight claim can take time and resources in processing. Therefore, Eric shares why it seems to take so long for carriers to process damage claims. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Freight Project Podcast. Hi, Eric. Welcome to the Freight Project Podcast. We're happy to have you. Wanted to have you on as a guest today to give your perspective. You're a manager here at Ceresys, and I think it's important that the industry is educated from true practitioners. I often am out there writing about the industry, and we have people who know about Ceresys, but it's always great to hear from the people who work with shippers every single day to help them achieve their goals. So thanks for being on today. Now, I want to ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at Ceresys.
Thanks for having me, Adam. I am the Customer Service Manager here at Ceresys. I oversee both our auditing billing department as well as our claims department. Ceresys provides both of these services to our customers to help streamline their internal processes by saving them time and money, by not having to dedicate their own resources to do either of these functions in-house. This is kind of my second career after spending 17 years in the airline industry, and I've been with Ceresys here for about a year and a half.
Oh, wow. So like me, I didn't come from the industry myself. So after 6 years of being here, kind of faked it till I made it. Now I understand what all these acronyms mean. LTL, parcel, what is FT? Oh, it's full truckload. So it's like me, I'm sure you've had to do some education of your own. So, how did you get involved in the industry? What made you want to make the switch?
Well, as I mentioned, this is kind of a second career for me after spending 17 years in the airline industry. And my area of focus within the airline industry was specifically around logistics, operations, and labor relations. And while there are many differences between the airline industry and the freight industries, there's also a great deal of similarities as well. Obviously, airlines is a form of transportation, and just having the logistics and trying to put pieces of the puzzle together, definitely those skills translate over into the freight industry. And in my last position prior to coming to Ceresys, I worked at a third-party vendor for the airlines, and their business model was extremely similar to Ceresys, where they were brokering hotel rooms instead of freight. And I think this background of having that experience of being a third-party vendor has really served me well in the customer service department here at Ceresys, and has been able to help move my organization forward, even though I'm still kind of ramping up in the freight industry.
Yeah, that's interesting. You were matching people to rooms. Now you're matching people to freight carriers. How about that? So, now that you're at Ceresys and you're the customer service manager, you obviously understand the importance of customer service. So why is the focus on customer service an important thing for shippers themselves to focus on, especially as the market is tight, rates are increasing, and there are many distractions in shipping that really could decrease shippers' ability to have successful customer service initiatives.
Well, I think customers are the backbone of any business, right? Without customers, they wouldn't be there, and that's especially true here at Ceresis as well. Ceresis isn't the only third-party logistics company that's experiencing the capacity crunch and the increasing freight costs. So here at Ceresis, we really need to try to separate ourselves from the competition by providing value add-ons to make our customers' processes more streamlined or efficient. Auditing our customers' invoices, managing their damage claims, or providing data or information so that our customers can make more informed choices, all can be value add-ons for our customers, and they can almost have as much a big impact on shippers' costs as the carrier rates.
That's interesting, that you really hit on value added. A lot of our customers traditionally, and it's changing somewhat, have been from the manufacturing OEMs or industrial wholesale distributors, B2B, aftermarket, stuff like that. And customer service was pretty simple. They ordered, you delivered it. But because of the capacity crunch and all of these things, I think you really hit on the fact that now even those people need to think about the customer and how they're serving them. So when it comes to added services, could you talk a little bit about a few of those services at Ceresis, just to kind of give an example of beyond matching you from, with your freight to a carrier and getting you from A to Z for your delivery. What are some other value-added services that are aiding shippers out there to become more efficient and not spend too much money as prices increase?
Adam, I think one of the services that Ceresis provides, the auditing the carrier's invoices, especially important to shippers, whether they're using a third-party logistics company or not. One of the things that really surprised me coming into this industry is just how complex the carrier's pricing structures are and how easily it can be to have inaccurate pricing for a shipment. Lots of carriers do different zones or zip codes, have different rates on them and different discounts depending on where that freight is going. And it's very easy to make a mistake and apply the wrong discount or the wrong pricing. And the other fact that we see here at Ceresis is a lot of times they may add an accessorial that really one shouldn't have been applied, like a residential delivery, where in reality it's going to a business or a commercial. And because of that, I think just blindly paying carriers' freight invoices is just going to add on to your freight costs. And in an environment where freight costs are going up because of the capacity crunch, I think shippers need to do their due diligence to make sure that they're protecting their assets and their money to ensure their freight invoices are very accurate.
I mean, that's key, as we've both said in this, and everybody who's shipping right now knows costs are going up. I mean, it's a good thing because demand is good. It's just simple economics. But just because, business is good or there's stronger consumer demand and freight volumes are increased doesn't mean you can't mind the bottom line. And as you said, the invoice auditing can help catch some of those billing errors, can help increase, continual improvement on the side of the shipper to make sure they look out for anything they may have done inaccurately, or working with the carrier and developing a stronger partnership. Now, another way that shippers can make sure they're not spending too much time or money is a better focus on freight claims management. Nobody wants to deal with that. That's pretty clear. But your team also works on freight claims every single day. We have a specific team for that for all of our shipper customers. So you guys probably have a lot of experience when it comes to freight claims management. So what are some things you'd offer up to a shipper who wants to know how to mitigate damage or loss issues?
Well, Adam, I think there's three things that come to mind in how shippers can help mitigate their damage or their loss issues. And the first one is providing pictures. The old adage of a picture's worth 1,000 words rings very true in the damage claims arena. If we can get our shippers to provide what the freight looked like when it was on a pallet and just prior to being loaded onto the truck, or even, we sometimes have shippers that provide us pictures of the freight that's on the truck, and you can see that, okay, here's the condition of the freight prior to the carrier picking it up, can be very helpful. Also, getting pictures, from the consignee to show how the freight arrived, whether they were unloading it, where you notice that, that was strewn about in the trailer, or just what the packaging, if it was in a box, the holes in the packaging, and being able to take as many pictures as you can, because that definitely helps prove and show that the carrier is liable for the damage that they caused. And so that would really be the first suggestion I would have that the shippers would want to really do. And one of the things that we really see is that it makes a huge difference in whether we're successful in recovering all of the damage claim or just a portion. The second piece is in looking at the making sure the consignee holds on to the damaged freight, or if it gets sent back because it's refused, then when it gets sent back to the original origin, then the shipper hang on to their freight. Per our federal guidelines that carriers have as they're investigating their claims, is they have the right to inspect or salvage that freight. And understand that sometimes room to store the freight is at a premium, and that's sometimes not as feasible to hold on to that freight. But again, trying to educate your consignees and letting them know that they're able to hold on to the freight, the better chance they have to recoup their full refund. And then lastly is just educating and instructing consignees to inspect their freight when it's delivered. Making sure that, they take a quick glance. Is the packaging okay? Is the shrink wrap okay? And making sure that if there is any damage to anything, that they notate that on the delivery receipt. Shippers have a much greater success rate of recouping money for damaged freight when we're dealing with a notated damage versus a concealed damage. Most carriers will deny concealed damage claims, or at most offer 1/3 of the claim amount to settle the concealed damage claims, due to the fact that there was a clear delivery receipt. And because of that, making sure your consignees are reviewing the freight when they come in, looking at it, inspecting it to make sure that there's no damage. And if there is, notating goes a long way in being, again, to be able to recover your full amount.
Oh, fantastic. Those are really great tips, that shippers can do, if they experience a freight or damage loss issue, and to be proactive. We're not just waiting for freight claims to happen. There are things, that you can do to have confidence in processing freight claims. But, many shippers on their own devices, they're frustrated and they don't necessarily have the time, experience, or resources like we have at Ceresis, processing this day in and day out. It's usually, depending on their volume, not as frequent as we see it. So they don't always understand as much as they would like to. And it's key to get that education, and we definitely try to provide that in our blog and some of our webinars. But I think the one thing I hear a lot in the marketplace, and maybe you hear this from customers as well, is why does it seem to take so long to resolve a freight claim? Can you shed some light on why does it take so long for carriers to process damage claims? Maybe just beyond us feeling like it's wrong, there may be a reason.
Well, Adam, I think there are a few different reasons why it appears that the length at times to resolve a damage claim is maybe more than what you would expect. I think the first big thing is that just the federal guidelines that the carriers have that have been set forth in laying out kind of the timeline for a damage claim and the time that they have to respond. The way that the federal guidelines work is the carriers have 120 days from the date the claim was filed to resolve a claim. And that can be, offering a settlement, paying it in full, denial. And even in that 120 days, carriers can go past that deadline by notifying the claimant that they're still investigating the claim. And typically we see on more expensive claims, the carriers will, do a little bit more due diligence on their part to ensure liability has been established in the fact that they were at fault for this damage. Another reason, and again, this is kind of more of a general trend, is that, we see some of the low cost carriers tend to be a little slower in paying out their claims than some other carriers. And, again, that's one of the benefits that they provide in the fact that here's maybe a cheaper alternative to ship your freight, but the consequences is that, they take a little bit longer to, pay out their claims. I think most claims are resolved in kind of about a 50 to 70 day window. Obviously the more proof and the more evidence, as I mentioned earlier, having the pictures that we can provide the carrier, the better position we can take with the carrier and the more pressure we can to really drive them to say, hey, listen, we've established liability here. What can we do to move this process along?
Yeah. Well, that's really good information. And I think, the key and the themes that I'm hearing here on this episode of the Freight Project podcast is, shippers aren't at the mercy of what happens to them. They can be proactive. The more they understand about, total cost of goods or just total cost of transportation and how that, applies to tactics such as your invoices and catching anything that's an error and maybe recouping some of that money, or just getting education on how to make sure you're doing everything right from an accounting perspective and a shipment processing perspective, can really allow you to save some time and reduce costs. And that applies similarly to freight claims. And so I want to thank you, Eric, for offering your perspective as the customer service manager here at Ceresys. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do our best as a 3PL, as a shipper, or as a carrier, to make our businesses profitable, but also to meet our goals and ultimately give great customer service, because that's how you keep customers. That's how you build a brand. That's how you keep your revenue and you stay profitable. So as a shipper, you can increase that customer service, among many other things, of course, by staying proactive and understanding your freight and getting as educated as you can on other things besides just creating a bill of lading. So, Eric, hope you have a great day. Can't wait to see you next time I'm up in headquarters. Eric's in Minnesota. I'm in Dallas. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.